everyone, I hope that you're doing very well. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm finally sharing with you week 2 of paintings this month. I'm doing daily paintings from life throughout September, in case you didn't know, and if you missed last week's first episode, that will be linked in the cards and the description for you to check out, so you can kind of get a bit of a better idea of what it is that I'm actually doing. But today I'm sharing the next 8 paintings, so I wanted to do 4 videos, and since the month is 30 days, it's not perfectly 4 weeks, so there's going to be 2 7 paintings video and 2 8 painting videos. But long story short, I had a lot of footage for this. It was almost 6 hours that I had to kind of condense down to a decent sized video, so these are going to go by quite quickly. And I still tried to keep in some real-time footage because I like seeing people paint in real time, but I also find that it can be very misleading to see these kinds of speed paints and think that people actually paint this quickly. And these paintings are taking up a lot of time, not all of them, and especially I'm almost done with week 3 by the time I'm recording this, and this last week I've been doing a lot smaller paintings just because life's been getting in the way. But these kind of oil paintings that you see me do at this point still, those take quite a while, and so I still wanted to include some real-time footage for you because I think it's nice to look at, but also just so you can actually get an idea of how quickly I'm painting and how I'm approaching things. But I won't get too much into that. I actually wanted to talk a bit more about the paintings themselves in this video and my process and how I'm approaching all this, because last time I mostly just explained what the challenge was about, I feel like. So the first 2 paintings in the video are actually my 2 favorites from the week. I wanted to paint something red again. I felt like I used a lot of cool tones in the previous few paintings, while I'd been using some warmer tones at the very beginning, and I really liked the look of those. So I thought I'd bring some reds and oranges back into things, and I'd just bought these really nice tomatoes that morning. So I thought I'd paint them, and I'm so glad I did. It's a very simple piece, but somehow the simplest ones always end up turning best, and I really like it. I like the warm red against kind of the cooler toned white background. I think it works really well, and it's definitely something that I want to keep in mind to play around with for future pieces as well. And then day 9, I wanted to revisit the composition from day 7, which is the last painting you saw in the previous video in the series. I really liked this kind of setup with the apples, but I wasn't very happy with the way that I painted it. I think I overworked it a bit too much, and I just messed up the shadows and I tried to add too much detail. And so I wanted to go for a bit of a simpler composition this time, less elements to it, but more variety in color, because I don't know, there was something wrong with the colors as well that I just wasn't convinced about. And I think the way that I approached it this second time around worked really well. I didn't overwork it like I did in day 7, which is always really hard to understand when to stop a painting. For some it's very intuitive, but for others I feel like I could just keep going, and then it just, especially with oil paint, it just becomes a very muddy mess, and I think that's what happened last week. But this time I tried to approach it with a bigger brush at the beginning, because specifically in that other painting I felt like I'd gone in with too much detail everywhere, and so I really wanted to start loose and then only focus on defining more specific things. And I also really like the green wine bottle in the back and how that looks with the warmer tones of the apples and the balls. So in this painting, I really feel like balance is key, and I feel like that with all paintings, but in this case specifically, and the one as previous as well, this warm, cool balance has been really interesting to work with, and I'm curious to see how far I can push it and kind of what I can get out of it. But I'm also trying to be very thoughtful about bringing color in my white, and I think this is a good example of that. I touched on it in a recent gouache paint with me that I posted, that I'll leave linked in the cards as well. But both in this case and in a couple other paintings this week, I was working with a lot of white areas. Like here we have the towel and the wall and the Polaroid pictures and the bottle label, and it can be really difficult to prevent them all from merging together. And so really exaggerating the subtle hues of color in those white areas can be a really good way to set them apart and to make a painting more interesting and more dynamic. At this point, I also decided to start working with gouache as well. I usually travel back to my parents' place at the weekends, and traveling with oil paints is always very messy and complicated, and it's just not the simplest thing. And so I thought it'd be nice to just bring my gouache palette with me, which I literally just can fit everything in a pencil case. And I do have some oil paints back in my parents' place, which I have used for, I think, the painting from day 5, but they're not my favorite, and I still have to like carry my mediums around, so it's always a bit more complicated. And then, you know, paintings don't dry, so I can't bring them back here to photograph them properly. So I thought it'd be nice to switch things around with gouache as well. And I don't know if I mentioned it in last week's video, but I initially thought I wanted to do the whole challenge in gouache this time. I did it all in oil, well, mostly in oil, in January, and I thought I wanted to do it in gouache this time around because I feel like I need the practice with gouache more than I do with oils, even though I'm still not a master of oils and I still have so much to learn. And this kind of exercises specifically really make me understand that I still have so much to learn, and that with each painting I have a new challenge to face. And so I'm glad that I'm doing oil paintings with this as well. But just for practical reasons, I decided to introduce gouache as well, and it's been really nice in upcoming days as well because I've been busy. Clearly, I have exams this month, and so it's been nice not having to take my oil paints out, which the oil painting itself is not a problem, but the cleanup is. I hate cleaning up after painting with oils, and gouache, you know, 2 minutes and you're all done. Oils takes like 15 minutes and it's all messy and I don't like it. So we're doing some more gouache paintings in this video as well, and I really like this one actually. I feel like this is a bit different from other gouache paintings that I've been doing recently. If you watch my recent gouache paint with me, I talk a bit more about how I've been trying to approach gouache paintings, but this was a bit different, I think, but I actually really like it, and I really like the color combination that I used, even though I don't know if it fits my usual color palette, but I think it's very interesting nonetheless. It's maybe a bit messy because my brushes are getting a bit frayed, but I tried to play with that and I tried to make that work. So I think that came out quite interesting. And then the day after, I decided to work on a self-portrait, and I'm doing these paintings from life, so I'm not working from photographs. And so the way that I did this self-portrait in particular was just by placing a mirror on my desk. Problem is I don't have a very big mirror, so I had to use like a makeup palette as my mirror, but it ended up working out anyways. And I've been wanting to do this kind of self-portrait for quite a while. Back in early 2020, before lockdown and everything, when I was still in the UK for my exchange year, I went to London for a day, and I specifically wanted to visit an exhibition from an artist that I like. But after that, I kind of had the whole day free, and I stumbled upon Lucian Freud's self-portrait exhibition. Can't remember what museum it was in, but I saw some pictures about it around London, and I thought it was something that I really liked immediately. I like the style. I never really seen any of his work in person, but also I hadn't really seen much like from photos either. And it was such a wonderful exhibition. I loved it, and I think I just never thought about self-portraits that much, and especially like not doing self-portraits from a photograph, but rather using a mirror or something like that, which is clearly a lot harder because you know, it's the light is changing, you're moving, and it's not like you can control the subject better than you could if it was another person in a way, but also you're the one painting it, so it's a lot to think about at the same time, to like try to keep the same pose and also paint. And so I think the pose ended up being quite stiff. It looks like me, I have to say. It does look like me, and my mum recognized me immediately when she saw it, which, I mean, okay, like the glasses and the like fringe and everything is quite recognizable, but I do think it looks like me. I just think the pose is a bit stiff, but I do actually really like it. It was quite the challenge, and it was only my second portrait I've ever done in gouache. I did one before, which I think you can see my 1 month of gouache painting video, but this was a lot of fun. And the thing with gouache painting is that it dries so differently from when you first mix it, and I really struggle with that with portraits, but I think this process went quite smoothly. It went through a big ugly stage, which I think gouache paintings often do for me, more than oil. But I'm quite proud of the end result, and I would be really interested to do an oil one as well, just to see how different the two would turn out. I think that would be a really, really interesting comparison to do. Then day 12 was another gouache painting, the last from this week. And I decided to paint some of my Christmas ornaments because I was very proud of them last year. Last year was my first Christmas kind of in my own place. And so I was very excited to decorate, and I wanted to go for a very natural, rustic decoration look. And so I dried these orange slices, and I got some pine cones, and I made these white stars with string and glue and paint, and it was so much fun to do. It was very messy, but it was so much fun to do, and I love how they turn out. I don't think I captured them well at all in this painting. I like the colors very much, but I don't like the painting itself, which, fair enough, happens. Doing a painting every single day, there's definitely good days and bad days, and I feel like there's been a lot of good days, but there's also been some misses, I suppose, and I think this was one of them. I really like the towel that I love these towels that I have, which are checkered, and I think that turned out really well. And I like the way that I painted the orange slices, but I think all together it just sort of all blends together a bit too much, and nothing is really defined enough, and I didn't know how to go about defining it further, so I just left it at some point. But still good practice, and I actually really like the subject, and I think it might be interesting to revisit it in a bit of a simpler composition, maybe, because there was a lot going on and it's a lot of kind of intricate elements, so maybe simplifying it down to just one of each or something like that might make for an interesting painting as well. Who knows, maybe I'll repaint these when I get to decorating again closer to the holiday season, which for me starts early November, because I go back to my parents' place in December, so it's nice to still enjoy the decorations, and so I have to put them up a bit earlier. Anyways, moving on to day 13, I got back to oil painting again, and I always feel rusty when I don't oil paint for a couple days, which is really weird. Even if I've been oil painting so much this month, if I leave it for a couple days and I kind of don't keep up the routine, I always feel rusty when I come back to it. But I had been working on a studio makeover these days, and specifically I put up some new cuttings in my room. My monstera is growing so much. I just had to make cuttings from it because it was starting to invade the whole of my room, and I had some empty wine bottles that I think look really pretty that I had laying around, and I didn't have any other kind of vases, so I just put those cuttings in empty wine bottles, and they look great, and so I thought I'd paint them alongside, I think, I don't remember if it was my pothos or... Yeah, it was my pothos cutting, one of the many I have around the house. And I love the way that it looked in real life, but I don't think I captured the brightness of the greens very well. I like the way that I painted the bottles, and I think I'm getting better at painting reflective objects, even though I noticed that I tend to paint them with really thick paint, and that can sometimes really make me struggle at some point, so maybe I'll have to work on that more. But I like the way that I painted those. I don't love the way that I painted the leaves specifically. I would have liked a brighter green, but bright green is not a color that I use a lot of, and I don't really know how to mix it. I know how to mix it, and I do mix that, and then I look at it on my palette and I'm like, no, that's just that doesn't feel like me, and so I mute it down. But I don't think that that's what this painting needed specifically, so I should have just left it, but you live and you learn. I still quite like the painting on its own, honestly. And then last day of this challenge is actually a painting that not last day, there's an extra painting in here. So day 14, this was end of second week. I really, really like this one. There's a lot of white, which makes it very hard to create a balanced painting because everything just sort of blends together. And so what I tried to do was really play around with different hues, and you can see later on in the painting process that I tried to cool down the background of my wall, which is a bit of a cooler toned white, and I really tried to warm up the desktop, and then I cooled down the cards as well, which I think made them stand out a bit more. And I don't know if you remember, but I painted cards a few videos back as well, and the way that I approached them is the same way that I approach them now, by essentially painting the white background first and then adding in all of the, you know, designs on the cards. And that makes it really difficult because with oil paint, it just sort of all blends together. And I don't know if it would make more sense for me to paint the designs first and then go in with the white, but I feel like that would just mess everything up as well. So I think I would like to try and paint them in gouache, which I could just let the first layer dry really quickly and then move on to adding the details later, and I think that would probably turn out better. But I do actually like the final result of this painting quite a lot. I love the colors, it feels very me, and I think the cards turned out a lot better than last time as well, so I'm quite proud of it. And now we're actually moving on to the last painting of the video. This was day 15, and I made some more cuttings from a succulent that I have on the balcony. I've put them in water, so I don't know whether it's going to work out, but I don't have any soil at the moment, so we'll see if they root in water or not. But I still thought they would look really, really pretty together with another, I think that was my Miseria, that's how I call it, but I don't know like the scientific name for the plant. Anyways, I thought that would look pretty. Again, this plant, both of these have some more purple undertones, and like one of them is very purple actually in real life as well, and I think the purple turned out great. Again, I think I should have gone for a much brighter green, which I didn't do, and I think the painting would have been a lot nicer if I went in with that. So I might eventually go back and try to fix these, but I like the idea of just keeping these alla prima. They are like daily studies, and I'm not, you know, I don't want to make a masterpiece in a day or anything, but it'd be nice to maybe revisit one of them and see what I can do with a bit more time. But I still like it. I like the composition, and I, to a certain extent, I actually like the colors as well. So you know, we'll see what I end up doing with these, but we are nearing the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed seeing all these painting processes. It's a lot to talk about, and I feel like I've rambled a lot, but there's a lot of paintings to talk about and a lot of stories behind them. But I hope you enjoyed them. Anyways, I wish you all a very lovely week, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!